Hello, everybody. Welcome. And I'd like to welcome you especially on this Easter Sunday. And I've been impulsed for a while to record this as I had to write the post that I did on my Love Light Alchemy page today also regarding Easter and the resurrection and the crucifixion. For some time now, I've understood the greater reasoning, the greater truth about Easter, and how we've just become accustomed and lost sight of what the truth of Easter truly is about. And we allowed it to become very commercialized about Easter eggs and a bunny. But of course, we know that it's about higher teachings, higher wisdom, higher alchemy, and alchemical gifts and skills that are on offer. So we're at a pivotal point in time, and particularly on this Piscean full moon, and just passing through the huge conjunction of Neptune and Jupiter. So this is all about major letting goes on the moon, major story letting go, major lies and deception and manipulations letting go. And on this expansion of Jupiter, which is Jupiter's always about expansion, is about taking us into that next phase, into that next level, that quantum state of truth, of believing and knowing who and what is the truth, and moving towards that grace of who we truly are. And in that expansion too, as the light pours through and as love enters into our heart and our willingness is to learn and grow accordingly, things are purged to us, as we know, all that is less than love must be purged, and it is being purged both individually and collectively. And at that point too, please don't forget that what you perceive in the world, be it as dark or evil or in judgment or anger or fear, is all a reflection back into you and your own shadow. So again, we never see anything outside of us that is not a vibration within us. Simple as that. But today, as I said, I want to speak about the crucifixion and resurrection and sow some seeds of truth that you can digest, you can mull over, you can agree, you can disagree. Don't care. That's entirely up to you. I'm not sitting here to preach to you, and I'm not sitting here to win you over. I'm sitting here to plant the seeds of truth, and how and when you choose to align to those, that's not my concern in truth. That is entirely up to your will and your heart versus your lower ego. So where do we start? Well, as I said, we're on this pivotal energetic point of the moon and the conjunction astrologically. And for the last, we can say definitely over 2,000 years, we've been solidly focused on the crucifixion. We celebrate the Friday, which is the crucifixion. We honor it, we take time off work for it, and we are remembering the crucifixion, the crucifixion, the crucifixion. And in our religious texts, and particularly the Roman Catholic Church, and I put my hand up that I understand this as being raised in Roman Catholic, as many of you out there are, or C of E's, Will, Methodist, Anglican, that's Church of England anyway. But we were also trained, we were taught this. It was a huge time. It was a time of sadness and suffering and pain. And we were taught, the fear that, Jesus came and he suffered for us. And so therefore we should also embrace suffering. And many people think they need to suffer to grow. They think they need to suffer to be worthy of God's love. They think they need to suffer to be seen in his presence, that, the more I suffer, he will accept me. Let's throw that out with the bathwater straight away. Any form of suffering that we choose to accept and believe in is less than love. And everything that the Master Jesus and all blessed beings of the light, that they serve the power of love and only the vibration of love, suffering does not exist in their domain. It is not a vibration that they atone with. They have not given us this grand opportunity to earth to suffer. So the crucifixion has been very much a game played by these less than entities, by these forces of less than light and love, shadow elements, for well before the Master came. Okay, so it's not just, when we're talking about like things might seem evil and dark right now, this isn't just in the last 20 years. This isn't even in the last 2,200 years. This has gone on for a very, very long time. We're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of years on Atlantean scale. So this energy has been prevalent for a long time. The difference with Easter is that the Master Jesus was sent to Earth to break the patterning, to bring forth the light that only he and his soul and his expanded consciousness of Sananda in his truest form can do and be under the guidance of Lord Maitreya. He chose this incredibly hard mission. Just like many of us have chosen our missions and they seem very difficult, nowhere near, obviously, his role, but that doesn't demean ours either. Ours can be very, very tricky and tough at times. But again, it's all about the evolution, and he chose to come in the mortal body to remember, just like we are. Yes, he had a bit of a heads up start by choosing the family that he did. And at this point too, I'd just like to really emphasize, and I've written a piece about this a couple of years back, which is on my website under a PDF somewhere in there that you could find, but it kind of starts to breach the truth about Easter. But all the beings around him at the time, Mary, Joseph, he had siblings. He wasn't an only child. Mary and Joseph, they were a couple. They had normal sexual relations. This was what the normal people did back then. And while they might be seen as deities, they had roles as humans on earth, as we are. But he had a family, and he chose, as we did, to forget, to remember. Yes, he had that greater role that we now know. But to have that greater role, he needed the people around him to support him. So Mary, Joseph, his cousins, his aunts and uncles, and many around within the community of the Essene community that they existed within, around Magdala and other areas, were all conscious and were all working in their consciousness with Source, knowing they were alchemical masters, knowing that they were medicinal practitioners, herbalists, light transitions. They could achieve anything. They practiced, they trained, and they knew and were prepared for this mission, all of them. So he had his support team until he awoke. But the greatest lie, the greatest thing that we have held on to as a lie and as a complete misperception, is that Jesus died. He died on the cross to save us and our sins. Now, I wrote today clearly, and I wanted everyone to truly know that sin is simply, we had this word sin, and it's always been this negative, this bad. And if you sinned, I remember going to confession as a kid in the Catholic Church. We had to go every week before communion. You had to go and confess your sins to the priest. I mean, what sin does a child have? Let's face it, a kid of 6, 7, 8, 10, whatever. And the sins were always made the things you did bad, the things you did wrong. Okay, so we've all had this, even if we haven't been a Catholic, we've all had this frequency of belief embedded in us that the sin is attached to Jesus, attached to God, attached to Source, whatever name you want to choose and give, that we are not worthy, that we are not of equal standing, equal vibration. How could we be of that presence? We will be judged. No, and no. Okay. So it was actually the word sin, and that's what I'm not a fan of the Bible, but the Old Testament has some amazing cryptic clues, really amazing. But the word sin, when I worked it out, when I was doing my stuff, and you can take it or leave it again, is it simply represents the word ego. And as I mean ego, I mean the lesser ego, not the higher ego. Okay. So sin equals ego. So as I wrote today, if we replace the word sin in any of the text, or we state the words that the Master spoke when he spoke of sin, when he forgave the sin, he was just simply forgiving our ego that never truly existed in his consciousness and still doesn't. And we can easily forgive ourselves and resurrect ourselves through the forgiveness of our ego and through working through our ego and literally acknowledging our ego. And I wrote today, and I probably won't remember it verbatim, but it was a text that I found where he spoke to a crowd and he wrote, and I said unto them, until they knew of their sin, they had no idea of the sin. And it was basically, as soon as they know of their sin, they cannot make excuses anymore. And that goes the same for us. The moment we recognize our ego and our less than ego and all the traits attached to it, all stemming and emanating out of fear, we cannot, at the highest level, we cannot from deep within our heart atone to the ego. We can, but we're not going to evolve. And so every moment we choose to align, we choose to not align so much, that we choose to acknowledge our ego, we choose to reconcile our ego, we are conscious and willing to raise the frequencies of our ego back to the heart, back into a heart space being. We are resurrecting our frequencies, we are rising. So while these terms crucifixion and resurrection tend to be isolated to the Jesus and this particular time of Easter, this is a period that we're going through every time we work with our ego in the death cycle. Every time we choose to make movement and evolve and raise our consciousness, we have just finished with a crucifixion of where we were continually suffering through that ego choice to a resurrected state of higher consciousness in which we've now evolved to a higher avenue of our heart and being. And then we emanate at that frequency. I hope you understand that. We are constantly in this soul expansion, crucifying the old, dying to the old, and resurrecting to the new. And this was precisely what the Master Jesus did. Now, that whole episode of Easter again was from the lower forces, from the beings in power of lower energy, wanted particularly to make that example of him because they feared him. They feared his power. They knew he came with great light and love, which is a threat to anything less than itself. A threat to the ego. The ego does not want light and love. It runs, it blocks, it fears it. So in their fear of their positions and false power, they had to make an example of him. So as they made the example of him, because his name obviously had gone through the lands and people had heard of who he was and these great miracles and amazing energies and teachings that he offered them, by crucifying him, they were trying to say and promoting the fear in the nation, this is how you'll suffer. If you follow this path, you too will suffer like this. And so while the Master Jesus came to show us the awakening and to show us the gifts of miracles as we came from our heart space, that miracles are on offer in every moment of every day, the consciousness of the collective chose fear. And so we played this game out for another 2,000 years till now. But it's changing now, and it will change forever now. But through the process, and the beings of alchemical light that Master Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and many around him, Martha, the other Marys, his uncle, Joseph, they all knew, they all had the capacity of vision, clairvoyance, clairaudience in all their own unique ways. Magdalene was an incredibly gifted herbalist, as was Mary. Mary had the energy frequencies of the goddess Isis. She was incarnation on earth, the only being to ever be able to hold the frequency of the goddess Isis in physical form. These women were powerful. Again, the men at the time, which they feared, which is why the Magdalene was so badly done by. But Mary and Jesus were destined, they were contracted to each other for this mission, for this purpose. Mary was trained specifically by the teachings of the Isis and the secret societies of women. Mother Mary had been a teacher within that society over many years. It's all about empowering their gifts, empowering their true energies and focus into the within, not the without. And Magdalene was trained specifically to support, as the divine feminine counterpart to the divine masculine, they were the twin flame union. In physical, they were married. And much is alluding to the fact of the wedding of Canaan, that was actually their wedding. Back in those times, they too had sexual activities. They too had a child. But all these omissions of truth were specifically left out of the Bible and the teachings, because they didn't want you to associate that you too could be like a Christ, that you too could be like them. They wanted them separate. They wanted that energy not known, those truths unknown, to keep everybody in fear to the best of their abilities. So coming to the time of the Last Supper, coming to the time of, Jesus knowing that he was going to be crucified on a cross, he knew all this in advance. This was no fluke that he was arrested. This was no fluke that things happen. I mean, we're talking about the master. He knew exactly before they knew that what was going to happen. It's all written in the ether. Just like we're writing in our dream time the script of our everyday perceptual so-called reality. He too was doing that. But he knew that he had chosen to master and evolve his soul to an even greater capacity, that he would choose to go through what was appearing to be a process of death, but it was death to his physical form in consciousness, that he consciously chose to leave his body and travel through the etheric field in full consciousness. Now, this has never been done before. To fully leave the field and at the same time plant the seeds, the flames of light, the adamantine particles of truth, and flames that would now be fully active and present as codes of truth and light for us now to awaken when the time and the divine plan was right. And that's what he did. Now, on his walk, if you remember, while he carried his cross, he was allowed to rest at one point. And the Maries were allowed to tend to him. They washed his face, his brow. They were close to him. And what they did was they actually planted one or both or either, exactly who it was, I don't know, but I know. Specific oils, herbs were placed upon his brow and his head that would drip down, and he could inhale them, he could absorb them, he could ingest them into his being. That would alter his state of consciousness from physical into a higher consciousness state also, sort of like a sedation or an anesthetic to assist him through the process. Now, at the time, he never died on the cross. He was in an anesthetized state. And again, his uncle was one of those that took him to the cave for the embalming and the sealing of the rock. And again, in that time, his uncle, an alchemical master, also assisted in the process for him to rise. So the whole journey of Easter, and this is in a very, very basic, succinct form, okay, let me tell you, because sometimes there's a lot for people to get their head around. But the whole teaching of this Easter message is that you, me, we as one are one, and we are of the Christ alchemical nature also. We are all at the 9th dimensional frequency, Christed beings of light. The divine feminine and the divine masculine Christ. And we are returning now to that frequency. We are on our way, those of us that are awake. But in saying that too, please do not judge others that you may deem as asleep, because those that you may seem that are asleep are some of the greatest teachers to us of our awakening, to step out of judgment, anger, frustration. As we are to them on some level, they're absorbing, the seeds are being planted through the consciousness levels. That's all that we truly are. And also, a lot of these beings that are asleep or deemed to be asleep are very evolved souls and may well be far more evolved than you. And when they awaken, when it's divine time and their divine plan, they will accelerate instantly into the knowing that they already are, which may be well equal or past you. So this is this very slippery slope to be aware of how we are standing in views of judgment, how we are in our ego of our spiritual knowledge and attainment, and to bring it back a peg, come back to humility, come back to just being and worrying about you. And let's get us right in this. Because it's about getting our frequencies right. It's understanding our lower ego and where we have the opportunity in every moment of trigger, in every moment of irritation and confrontation, to see that mirror on offer from whoever is our great mirror and teacher, and only go within and be concerned about raising and resurrecting our frequencies. The ultimate aim here is that the crucifixion time is now done. We are completing it now as we move through and raise all within us and let all the stories of lies, all the stories of wounds, of suffering, of trauma, of tragedy, they must go. They were not true or love or true high reality ever, because love cannot create that. Only the ego energy, less than love, does and can. But that is a delusion. It is an illusion. And we are now moving away from all that is less than love, letting all those lower frequencies go, rising to the truth and back into the soul, the higher self, the holy Christ self, the mighty I am presence, and the monadic aspect of all that we are that exists on multidimensional quantum fields across the space-time continuum now. We are the Christ, and we have evolved. We have been born of the same Father, Mother, the Christos and Sophia, our true parents, and they are calling us home to remember these truths right now. So on this Easter, it's time for reflection. Have a little look within, give thanks and praise for the incredible light work that has taken place for now. So planned, so orchestrated is this wondrous divine picture. We could not even contemplate it in human third dimensional capacity. It is so beyond our thought process right now. But in our heart, we hear the truth, we know the truth, we feel the truth. And that's what we're being asked to attune to and atone to at this particular point in now. So I'd love to hear any thoughts. I'd love to answer any questions, any discrepancies, anything that this may raise for people. I'm here. You can contact me via the website. You can contact me via Love Light Alchemy page or Instagram. But yeah, I know that this message is important, and they're wanting this to get out to you on this particular Easter occasion of 2022. So in that knowledge, have a wonderful day. Enjoy it with love and grace with all that you love. And I'm off to see my daughter and my beautiful granddaughter, which I can't wait. Other than that, I've had a fantastic Easter where I have been on my own predominantly. My husband's away, my daughter's at work, and I've had so much time to self-reflect, to be me, to listen and just be in my flow. And that's the goddess energy in full work and full flight, when you just feel all the way and let your heart be your guide. Okay, nice talking to you. Have a great day, as I said, and I will chat to you soon. Okay, much love.